The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of Whitmore Conservatory of Music as Lily Chen pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway. At 43, her small frame moved with quiet efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, eyes downcast as she navigated the polished floors she had just finished mopping. 3 weeks into her new job as evening custodian, she still felt out of place among the grand architecture and even grander talents that filled these halls during daylight hours. The sounds of practice rooms gradually fell silent as students packed up their instruments and filtered out into the cool autumn evening. Lily checked her watch, 7:30. Another hour and she would have the building mostly to herself, just how she preferred it. "Excuse me," a voice called from behind. Lily turned to see a young woman hurrying toward her, violin case clutched awkwardly alongside an overstuffed backpack. "Do you know if practice room 7 is open tomorrow morning?" The schedule sheet was missing. Lily hesitated before answering. "Room 7 has a broken window latch. Maintenance will fix it tomorrow. Room 9 should be free, though. No one has signed up. Thanks." The student smiled briefly before rushing off, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Lily continued her work, moving methodically from room to room, emptying small trash bins filled with discarded sheet music and forgotten coffee cups. She wiped down surfaces, straightened chairs, and swept up the day's debris. Her movements were practiced and efficient. This job wasn't so different from the dozen others she'd held over the years. Only the setting had changed. When the last faculty member finally left the building, nodding politely as they passed, Lily allowed her shoulders to relax. The quietness of the empty conservatory wasn't oppressive to her. It was a relief. For the past 16 years, silence had been a rare luxury in her life. She pushed her cart toward the main performance hall, a space she saved for last in her nightly routine. The cavernous room with its sloped seating and magnificent stage always took her breath away. 3 grand pianos stood on the polished wooden stage, their lids closed, waiting for tomorrow's performers. Lily checked that the door was firmly shut behind her before allowing herself to walk across the stage. Her footsteps were nearly silent in her worn sneakers as she approached the center piano. For several minutes she simply stood there, one hand resting lightly on its closed lid, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath her fingertips. 6 months ago, she had been in a small apartment 2,000 miles away, sleeping on a fold-out couch next to her mother's hospital bed, waking every few hours to give medication or adjust pillows. The old upright piano they'd brought from their homeland had been sold years ago to pay for medical bills. 16 years of her life had been spent caring for her mother after the stroke that left her partially paralyzed. 16 years since Lily had walked away from everything else. She opened the lid of the piano carefully, making sure it wouldn't make a sound. The black and white keys seemed to glow in the dim stage lighting. Lily positioned her hands above them, not touching, just hovering an inch above the surface. Her fingers moved in a silent dance, playing a piece only she could hear. A sound from the hallway startled her. She quickly closed the lid and hurried back to her cart, heart pounding as if she'd been caught doing something forbidden. "Hello? Anyone still here?" A security guard poked his head through the door. "Just me," Lily called back, grabbing a cloth and wiping down a surface she'd already cleaned. "Finishing up in here?" "Take your time," he replied. "Just doing my rounds. I'll be back in 30 minutes for final lockup." When he left, Lily let out a slow breath. She needed this job. The pay wasn't great, but the conservatory offered a small room in the staff quarters in the building next door, a blessing after weeks in a cheap motel while she looked for work. She couldn't risk losing this position because of foolish sentimentality. As she finished her shift and walked across the courtyard to her tiny room, Lily thought about the newspaper clipping folded in her wallet. "Rising star vanishes from concert circuit," the headline read. The article was yellowed with age now, the ink fading, but she kept it as a reminder of a different life. A life before duty and sacrifice had reshaped her world. Her room was sparse but clean. A single bed, a desk, a small refrigerator, and a hot plate. On the desk sat a framed photo of her mother, smiling from her wheelchair during their last birthday celebration together. Next to it was a thin keyboard with headphone jacks, not a real piano, but it had kept her fingers nimble during late nights when her mother finally slept. Lily opened her small closet and pulled out a worn shoebox from the top shelf. Inside were programs from concerts in Vienna, Tokyo, New York, memories from another lifetime. At the bottom lay a medal from an international competition and several glowing reviews cut from newspapers around the world. She never looked at these items when anyone might see her. They belonged to someone who no longer existed. After eating a simple dinner of soup and rice, Lily sat at her desk and plugged the headphones into her keyboard. Her fingers found the keys without thought, muscle memory taking over as she began to play. In her mind, the thin electronic tones transformed into the rich resonant sounds of a concert grand. Her eyes closed as she lost herself in Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had once played to a standing ovation in Prague. Morning came too quickly. Lily woke before her alarm, dressed in her gray custodial uniform, and headed to the small cafeteria for breakfast before most students arrived. As she sipped her tea, she overheard two faculty members at a nearby table. "The Rachmaninoff showcase is falling apart," said a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, whom Lily recognized as Professor Walsh, head of the piano department. "None of the students want to attempt the third concerto. They claim it's too difficult with only 8 weeks to prepare." Her companion, a bearded man who taught music theory, shrugged. "It's Rachmaninoff. What did you expect? Maybe change the program to something more accessible." "That's not the point," Professor Walsh replied, frustration evident in her voice. "These are supposed to be the most talented young pianists in the country. They need to be pushed beyond their comfort zones." Lily kept her eyes on her tea, trying not to listen, yet unable to stop herself. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 had been her signature piece once, the work that had launched her career before she disappeared from public view. Later that morning, as she mopped the floors near the faculty offices, Lily noticed a poster being hung on the bulletin board. "Winter Showcase and Evening of Rachmaninoff," it announced in bold letters. The date was set for December, just before the holiday break. She paused briefly, then continued with her work, pushing thoughts of music from her mind. Days turned into weeks as October faded into November. Lily settled into her routine, becoming a familiar but nearly invisible presence in the conservatory. Students rarely noticed her as she worked around them, and faculty members acknowledged her with polite nods but little conversation. That suited Lily just fine. The less attention she drew, the better. One evening, as she cleaned the faculty lounge, she heard raised voices from the conference room across the hall. The door was slightly ajar, and Professor Walsh's distinctive voice carried clearly. "The showcase is 6 weeks away, and we're still struggling to find students willing to tackle the third concerto. It's embarrassing. Perhaps we've set the bar too high this time," another voice suggested. "Nonsense. When I was a student, we wouldn't dream of backing down from a challenge like this. Perhaps we need to lead by example." Lily moved away from the door, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. She finished her work quickly and left the building earlier than usual that night, a strange uneasiness following her home. In her room, she took out her keyboard but found herself unable to play. Instead, she sat on her bed and looked out the small window at the conservatory building, glowing in the distance. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to wonder what might have been if she had made different choices. Her mother had never asked her to give up her career. That had been Lily's decision after the stroke left her mother unable to care for herself. There had been no other family to help, and hiring full-time care was far beyond their means. So at 27, at the height of her success, Lily had canceled her remaining tour dates and returned home. "It's temporary," she had told her agent, "just until Mom recovers enough for me to find a solution." But weeks turned into months and months into years. Her mother's condition improved only marginally, requiring constant care and attention. Lily took whatever jobs she could that allowed her to be home most of the time: data entry, medical billing, online translation work. The piano became a luxury she could only enjoy in stolen moments with headphones while her mother slept. And now, at 43, after her mother had finally passed away, Lily found herself starting over completely, in a new city with nothing but her memories and the skills in her hands that no one knew about. The next morning, Lily noticed a new sign posted next to the Rachmaninoff showcase poster. "Faculty Staff Challenge, everyone plays Rachmaninoff," it proclaimed. Below was an explanation that to encourage student participation, all conservatory employees would attempt to play a short excerpt from the third concerto at an informal gathering next week. "No experience necessary, it's all in good fun," the sign concluded cheerfully. A knot formed in Lily's stomach. She had been careful to keep her past hidden, starting fresh where no one would connect her to the young pianist who had vanished from the concert stage years ago. She had even changed her name slightly, using her mother's maiden name instead of her professional one. The last thing she wanted was attention. As she turned away from the notice, Professor Walsh approached with a clipboard. Ms. Chen, isn't it? I need your name on the participant list for next week's challenge." Lily's hands tightened around her mop handle. "I'm sorry, I don't play the piano." Professor Walsh smiled indulgently. "That's rather the point, dear. None of us expect the maintenance staff to play well. It's just to show solidarity with the students, to prove we're all willing to try difficult things. Just a few notes, that's all we ask." Lily looked down at her worn hands, the hands that had once moved audiences to tears. "I really don't think I should—" "Nonsense. Everyone is participating. Even our security guards have signed up." The professor's tone was kind but firm. "It will be fun, I promise. And who knows? You might discover a hidden talent." With no graceful way to refuse, Lily reluctantly nodded. Professor Walsh added her name to the list with a flourish and moved on to corner another staff member. That night, alone in her room, Lily stared at her silent keyboard. After 16 years of playing only for herself, the thought of sitting at a piano in front of others filled her, with a mixture of terror and something else, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Anticipation. The week leading up to the faculty staff challenge passed too quickly for Lily. Each day, she considered approaching Professor Walsh to explain why she couldn't participate, but the words never came. How could she explain without revealing everything? And if she revealed everything, what then? The questions chased each other in circles through her mind as she went about her cleaning duties. The conservatory buzzed with nervous energy as the day approached. Students gathered in small groups, whispering and occasionally breaking into laughter, when a particularly brave staff member would practice the assigned Rachmaninoff passage, where they could be overheard. The cafeteria cook tried a few notes on a student's keyboard during lunch break, causing an eruption of good-natured cheers. Lily watched it all from a distance, her anxiety growing. 16 years had passed since she had played for anyone other than herself. Even before that, she had always battled terrible stage fright, though few in her audience ever noticed once her fingers touched the keys. 2 days before the challenge, Lily was cleaning the practice rooms when she noticed a copy of the music lying abandoned on a piano. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then picked it up. The passage they were all supposed to play was marked with a yellow highlighter, a short but notoriously difficult section from the first movement of Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. Her fingers tingled as she studied the notes. This particular section had always been one of her favorites, with its cascading arpeggios and complex rhythmic patterns. Without thinking, her left hand began to move, muscle memory guiding her through the bass line even without a piano. "Are you playing air piano?" Lily jumped, nearly dropping the music. A young man stood in the doorway, amusement lighting his eyes. She recognized him as one of the janitors who worked the day shift. "No, I was just looking at what we're supposed to play tomorrow." She quickly set the music back on the piano. "Scary, isn't it?" He grinned, coming into the room to collect the trash. "I can barely play chopsticks, and they expect me to tackle Rachmaninoff." "Professor Walsh is sadistic." Lily managed a small smile. "Are you nervous?" "Nah, I figure I'll just hit some random keys and be done with it. No one expects the cleaning staff to be musical geniuses, right?" He tied up the trash bag and hoisted it over his shoulder. "You should do the same. Have fun with it." After he left, Lily stayed for a moment staring at the piano. Have fun with it. When was the last time playing the piano had been just fun for her? As a child, perhaps, before the competitions and concert tours, before the critics and the pressure, before music became both her identity and her livelihood. That night in her room, Lily took out her keyboard and played the passage. Her fingers moving with ease through the complex patterns. She could still do it. The technique was still there. But as she played it again, slower this time, she realized that something had changed over the years. The music felt different to her now. Where once she had focused on technical perfection, now she heard the emotion in every phrase, felt the story behind each note. Years of loss and longing had transformed her playing into something deeper than it had been in her youth. The morning of the challenge arrived. Lily woke early, her stomach in knots. She dressed with extra care, choosing her cleanest uniform and pulling her hair back neatly. Her hands trembled slightly as she sipped her morning tea. The event was scheduled for 11 o'clock in the main recital hall. Classes had been canceled and everyone at the conservatory was expected to attend. As Lily walked across the courtyard, she noticed students streaming toward the building, laughing and talking excitedly. Inside, the recital hall was packed. Lily slipped in through a side door, hoping to find an inconspicuous seat near the back, but Professor Walsh spotted her immediately. "Ah, Ms. Chen, there you are. All participants are sitting in the first 3 rows. Please." She gestured to the front of the hall where a mix of faculty and staff members were already seated, many looking as nervous as Lily felt. With no choice, Lily made her way to an empty seat in the 3rd row. A few minutes later, Professor Walsh took the stage, standing beside the gleaming grand piano. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to our first ever Faculty Staff Rachmaninoff Challenge." She beamed at the audience. "As you know, our winter showcase will feature Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, one of the most difficult pieces in the classical repertoire. Some of our students have been hesitant to take on this challenge." Scattered laughter rippled through the hall. "So to demonstrate that we can all push beyond our comfort zones, every member of our faculty and staff has agreed to attempt a short passage from this magnificent work." She gestured to the piano. "No matter your musical background, today we celebrate the attempt, not the achievement." The event began with Professor Jenkins from the Music History Department. A violinist by training, he approached the piano with exaggerated caution, earning chuckles from the audience. His attempt at the passage was halting but earnest, and he received warm applause when he finished. One by one, faculty members and administrative staff took their turns. Some played quite well, particularly those from the piano department. Others could barely find middle C but gamely pressed on amid encouraging cheers. The cafeteria cook, true to his practice session, played a recognizable few notes before standing up with a theatrical bow. Lily watched, her anxiety gradually giving way to a different feeling. There was such joy in the room, such genuine support for each person who tried, regardless of their skill level. No one was being judged or criticized. It was simply a community coming together through music, celebrating effort rather than perfection. "Lily Chen, custodial staff," Professor Walsh called out. Lily's moment had arrived. As she stood, a hush fell over the room. She made her way to the piano, each step feeling both impossibly long and much too quick. The polished black instrument waited for her, its lid raised to project sound into the hall. She sat on the bench, adjusting it slightly from the previous player's position. The keys gleamed up at her, familiar yet somehow foreign after so many years of playing only on her silent keyboard. She placed her hands in her lap, taking a deep breath. The room waited. Lily glanced up to see Professor Walsh watching her with a kind, encouraging smile. In the audience, she spotted the young janitor who had told her to have fun with it. He gave her a thumbs up. Lily placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingers. The sensation was so different from her practice keyboard that for a moment, she wasn't sure she could begin. She closed her eyes, took another breath, and let her muscle memory guide her. The first notes rang out clearly in the silent hall. Unlike the hesitant attempts of many before her, these notes were played with confidence, with precision. Her fingers found their places without thought, moving through the complex passage with ease. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of stopping at the end of the assigned section, Lily's fingers continued, flowing naturally into the next phrase, and then the next. The music poured out of her like water breaking through a dam. Years of playing in silence, of holding back, fell away as Rachmaninoff's magnificent composition filled the hall. She was dimly aware of the silence in the room, of the stunned faces watching her, but she couldn't stop now if she tried. The music had taken over, carrying her forward through the sweeping melodic lines and thunderous chords of the first movement's development section. As she played, Lily felt tears streaming down her face, but her hands never faltered. Every emotion she had suppressed for 16 years, grief, longing, love, loss, found its voice through the piano. Her body swayed with the music, no longer rigid with fear, but fluid and expressive. In the audience, Professor Walsh stood frozen, her mouth slightly open in shock. Students leaned forward in their seats, some with phones raised to record the unexpected performance. The young janitor who had spoken to Lily the day before whispered to his neighbor, "Did you know she could play like that?" When Lily finally brought the section to its natural conclusion, her hand stilled on the keys. For a moment, the hall remained in absolute silence. Then, as if a spell had been broken, someone in the back began to applaud. Others joined in, the applause swelling until the entire hall was on its feet. Lily opened her eyes, suddenly aware of what she had done. The standing ovation continued as she hastily rose from the bench, her face flushed with embarrassment. She had not meant to play so much, to reveal so much of herself. She had been carried away by the sheer joy of playing on a real piano again, of making music that others could hear. As she tried to make her way back to her seat, Professor Walsh intercepted her, taking both her hands in her own. "Miss Chen," she said, her voice barely audible over the continuing applause. "Who are you? Where did you learn to play like that?" Lily looked down at their joined hands, her own calloused from years of manual labor, the professor's well-manicured and adorned with elegant rings. "I used to play," she said simply. "A long time ago? Used to play?" Professor Walsh repeated incredulously. "My dear, that was a world-class performance of one of the most challenging piano pieces ever written. That was not someone who used to play." The applause had begun to die down, but people were turning in their seats, straining to hear the conversation between the custodian and the piano department head. "Please," Lily said quietly. "I don't want to make a scene. I just want to go back to my seat." Professor Walsh studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Of course. But we will talk later, yes?" Lily made her way back to her seat, aware of the stares following her. The program continued, but she barely registered the remaining performances. Her mind was in turmoil. After years of anonymity, of careful invisibility, she had exposed herself completely. There would be questions now, curiosity, perhaps even recognition. As the event concluded and people began to file out of the hall, Lily remained seated, uncertain of what to do next. A group of piano students hovered nearby, clearly wanting to approach her but hesitant. Professor Walsh was deep in conversation with the conservatory director, both of them glancing in her direction occasionally. The world she had carefully constructed was shifting beneath her feet. She had come here seeking a quiet life, a fresh start without the weight of her past. Now, in a matter of minutes, everything had changed. For better or worse, Lily Chen was no longer invisible. By the time Lily made it back to her small room that evening, the video had already spread throughout the conservatory. Someone had recorded her performance on their phone, and now it was being passed from student to student, faculty member to faculty member. She could feel the change in how people looked at her as she walked across the courtyard. Curious glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she got too close. She closed her door and leaned against it, heart pounding. What had she done? 16 years of careful anonymity shattered in a moment of weakness. She should never have let herself get carried away like that. A gentle knock on her door made her jump. She opened it to find Professor Walsh standing there, a concerned expression on her face. "Ms. Chen, may I come in?" "I think we should talk." Lily hesitated, then stepped aside. The professor entered, looking around the tiny room with surprise, her eyes lingering on the keyboard and the framed photo of Lily's mother. "I'll be direct," Professor Walsh said, turning to face her. "You're not just someone who used to play. What I heard today was the work of a master pianist with years of professional training. Your technique, your interpretation." She shook her head in wonder. "I've been teaching for 30 years and I've rarely heard Rachmaninoff played with such depth." Lily sat on the edge of her bed, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'm just the cleaning lady, Professor. That's all I want to be. But why? With talent like yours?" The professor stopped, studying Lily's face. "You're hiding, aren't you? From what or from whom?" Lily looked down at her hands that had once been insured for $1 million, now rough from years of labor. "Not hiding, just starting over." Professor Walsh sat in Lily's desk chair, her expression softening. "I respect your privacy, but I must tell you that there's quite a stir about your performance. Students are asking who you are. A few of the faculty members from the piano department suspect—" She paused. "They think you might be Mei Ling Chang." The name hung in the air between them, a name Lily hadn't heard spoken aloud in years. Her professional name, the name that had once appeared on concert programs and album covers around the world. That's ridiculous, Lily said, but her voice lacked conviction. Professor Walsh leaned forward. Is it? Mei Ling Chang was a piano prodigy who disappeared from the international stage 16 years ago, at the height of her career. She was known for her exceptional interpretation of Rachmaninoff. She gestured toward Lily. The timing fits, and while your appearance has changed, your hands on the keys, that can't be disguised. Lily remained silent, her heart racing. She had never expected to be recognized, not after all these years. Not in this small conservatory far from the major music centers where she had once performed. I don't mean to pressure you, Professor Walsh continued gently, but you should know that Thomas Lee, one of our graduate students, has already posted a side-by-side comparison of your performance today with a recording of Mei Ling Chang playing the same concerto with the Vienna Philharmonic, and so it's convincing. Lily closed her eyes. It was happening too fast. She wasn't ready. Why are you here cleaning our practice rooms when you could be performing on the world's greatest stages, or at least teaching at a prestigious institution? Any conservatory would be honored to have you on their faculty. The question was asked with genuine bewilderment, not judgment. Lily looked at the photo of her mother, drawing strength from the familiar smile. Life takes unexpected turns sometimes, she said quietly. 16 years ago, my mother suffered a severe stroke. I was on tour in Europe when it happened. By the time I got home, the doctor said she would need constant care. Lily's voice grew stronger as she continued. There was no one else. No other family. The cost of professional nursing care was far beyond what we could afford, even with my concert fees. So you gave it all up, Professor Walsh said softly. Your career, your music, not my music, Lily corrected her. I never gave that up. I just played for an audience of one. My mother loved to hear me play, even when her condition worsened and she couldn't always remember who I was. She gestured to the keyboard on her desk. I practiced at night with headphones after she fell asleep. Every day for 16 years. It kept me sane during the hardest times. Professor Walsh was silent for a long moment. And your mother now? She passed away 6 months ago, Lily said, the words still difficult to say aloud. After the funeral, after settling her affairs, I needed a fresh start. Somewhere quiet, somewhere I could just be anonymous for a while, figure out what comes next. And you chose to be a custodian at a music conservatory. Professor Walsh smiled slightly. Still close to music, but not part of that world. Lily nodded. It felt right somehow. I needed the job and the staff housing. I didn't expect today. No one could have expected today, the professor said with a small laugh. You gave quite a few people heart palpitations, myself included. Her expression grew serious again. But Lily, or should I call you Mei Ling? What you did today wasn't just unexpected. It was extraordinary. To play like that after 16 years away from performing. Most pianists couldn't manage it. I never stopped playing, Lily reminded her. Just not for anyone else. A commotion outside drew their attention. Voices were raised in the courtyard below Lily's window. She rose and peered out to see a small crowd of students gathered, looking up at her building. One held up a phone, apparently trying to confirm which window belonged to her room. Word is spreading, Professor Walsh said, joining her at the window. I'm afraid your days of anonymity at Whitmore may be over. Lily stepped back from the window, panic rising in her chest. I'm not ready for this. I just wanted a quiet life. Perhaps you did, Professor Walsh said gently, but sometimes our gifts have a way of refusing to stay hidden. She placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. You don't have to face this alone. Let me help you navigate what comes next. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it and froze. It was an email from Robert Winters, her former agent whom she hadn't spoken to in 16 years. Subject, it's really you, isn't it? She read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. Professor Walsh raised her eyebrows. That was fast. Someone must have recognized me and contacted him, Lily said, her hands shaking as she set the phone down without opening the email. It's starting already. What's starting? The pressure. The expectations. The demands. Lily paced the small room. You don't understand. When I left, I was at the top. Everyone wanted a piece of me. Concert halls, recording companies, festivals. My schedule was booked 3 years in advance. I was on planes more than I was on the ground. She stopped, looking at the professor with haunted eyes. I was exhausted, constantly anxious, hardly sleeping. When my mother got sick, part of me was almost relieved to have a reason to step away. "And now you're afraid of being pulled back into that life," Professor Walsh said, understanding dawning on her face. "I'm 43 years old," Lily said. "Too old to restart a performance career, but young enough that people will expect me to try. The pressure will be enormous." The professor was quiet for a moment, considering. What if there was another option? A middle path? Lily looked at her questioningly. "Our piano faculty could certainly use someone with your experience and talent," Professor Walsh said carefully. "And unlike the concert circuit, teaching offers a more structured, grounded lifestyle. You could share your gift without the constant travel and pressure of performing." The idea caught Lily off guard. Teaching had never been part of her plan, either the old one or the new one, yet something about it resonated with her. "I don't have any teaching credentials," she objected weakly. Professor Walsh laughed. "My dear, your credentials are your hands and what they can do. No one who heard you play today would question your qualifications." She grew more serious. "Think about it, at least. It would be a shame for all that knowledge and artistry to remain locked away, when there are so many young musicians who could benefit from your guidance." A knock at the door interrupted them. Lily tensed, but Professor Walsh patted her arm reassuringly and went to answer it. She spoke briefly with someone in the hallway, then closed the door and turned back to Lily. "It seems your audience is growing," she said. "There are several students outside who'd like to speak with you. And the dean has called an emergency faculty meeting for tomorrow morning." She checked her watch. "I should go. But please consider what I've said." After the professor left, Lily sat alone in her room, thoughts swirling. Another knock came at her door, but she didn't answer it. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications, emails, messages, even calls from numbers she didn't recognize. News was spreading faster than she could process it. She picked up her mother's photo, tracing the familiar smile. "What would you tell me to do, Mom?" she whispered. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter, attending every recital from the time Lily was 5 years old. Even during the hardest days of her illness, she had listened to Lily play, her eyes lighting up at the music when little else could reach her. "Music is not just for you," her mother used to say. "It's a gift you share with the world." For 16 years, Lily had kept that gift tucked away, playing only for herself and her mother. Now, unexpectedly, the world had caught a glimpse of it again. And despite her fear, despite her desire for anonymity, a small part of her had come alive on that stage today, a part she had almost forgotten existed. She went to her desk and opened her agent's email, bracing herself for the flood of pressure and expectations she was sure would follow. Instead, she found something unexpected. "Mei Ling, if it really is you, I won't pretend I understand why you vanished or why you've surfaced now as a conservatory custodian of all things. But I want you to know this. Whatever you decide to do next, it should be your choice this time. Not your mother's, not mine, not the critics or the public's. Yours. You've earned that right. If you want to talk, my door is always open. Robert." Lily read the email twice, tears welling in her eyes. She hadn't expected understanding. She hadn't expected to be given a choice. Outside, the small crowd of students was still gathered in the courtyard. One of them had brought a portable keyboard and was attempting to play the same Rachmaninoff passage that had changed everything just hours before. Lily watched them from her window, invisible once more behind the curtain. Tomorrow she would have to decide what to do, face the music world again on new terms or run from it once more. But tonight, for the first time in 16 years, she allowed herself to remember what it felt like to share her gift with others, to move people with her playing, to be not just Lily Chen, the custodian, but Mei Ling Chang, the pianist. And despite her fear, she had to admit, it felt like coming home. Sleep eluded Lily that night. She lay awake, listening to the occasional voices in the courtyard below as late-night visitors came hoping for a glimpse of the mysterious pianist. By morning, her room felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. She couldn't hide forever, but she wasn't ready to face what waited outside either. Her phone had died hours ago from the constant stream of notifications. She hadn't bothered to charge it. Instead, she sat at her small desk, looking through the worn shoebox of mementos from her previous life. Concert programs, newspaper clippings, faded photographs of a younger Lily smiling beside famous conductors and musicians. A gentle knock on her door startled her. She quickly returned the items to the box before answering. It was the young janitor she had spoken with before the performance. looking both awkward and excited. Hey, Ms. Chen, or should I call you Ms. Chang now? Everyone's talking about you. He shifted uncomfortably. Professor Walsh asked me to tell you that there's a faculty meeting at 9, and she was hoping you'd come. She said to use the side entrance if you don't want to deal with, well, them. He gestured toward the window where Lily could see a small group of students had already gathered in the courtyard despite the early hour. Thank you, she said quietly. And it's still Lily, just Lily. He nodded, looking relieved. Cool, I'm Pete, by the way. I've worked here 2 years and never knew we had a famous pianist mopping our floors. He grinned. That's kind of awesome, actually. Despite herself, Lily smiled. His straightforward reaction was refreshing after the chaos of the previous day. I'll walk with you to the side entrance if you want, Pete offered. I can run interference if anyone tries to bother you. 20 minutes later, Lily found herself being ushered through the maintenance corridor into the administrative wing of the conservatory. Pete had indeed proved a valuable escort, his uniform and confident stride making it easy to move through the building without attracting attention. Professor Walsh was waiting outside the conference room. Thank you for coming, she said, her expression a mix of concern and excitement. The dean wants to speak with you before the full faculty arrives. Lily followed her into the room where an older man with silver hair was reviewing papers at the head of a large table. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening slightly. Ms. Chang, or do you prefer Chen now? He stood, extending his hand. I'm Dean Rodriguez. It's truly an honor to meet you. Lily is fine, she said, shaking his hand briefly before taking a seat. Lily, then. He sat back down, studying her with undisguised curiosity. I must say, when Catherine told me who you really were, I didn't believe her at first. But I've spent most of the night watching videos of your performances from years ago. The resemblance is unmistakable once you know to look for it. Lily glanced at Professor Walsh, Catherine, with surprise. They had reached a first-name basis quickly. I'll be direct, the dean continued. Your performance yesterday has created quite a situation. We've received calls from every major music publication in the country. Your former agent has been in touch. Even the New York Philharmonic reached out asking if it's really you. He leaned forward. The story of Mei-Ling Chang, the vanished virtuoso, suddenly reappearing as a custodian at our conservatory. Well, it's generating more publicity than our institution has seen in decades. Lily's stomach tightened. This was exactly what she had feared. I understand this attention is unwelcome, Dean Rodriguez said, his tone softening as he noticed her discomfort. Catherine has explained some of your circumstances. Your devotion to your mother was admirable, truly. But now we must address the current situation. I can resign, Lily said quietly. I never meant to cause disruption. Resign? The dean looked genuinely shocked. My dear, that's the last thing we want. In fact, quite the opposite. He exchanged glances with Professor Walsh. We'd like to offer you a position on our faculty. Lily blinked, caught off guard despite Professor Walsh's hint the previous evening. As Catherine may have mentioned, we believe your expertise would be invaluable to our students. Your interpretation of Rachmaninoff alone would make you an asset to our piano department. But your broader experience in the international concert world, well, that's something few of our current faculty can claim. I've never taught before, Lily said, her voice uncertain. I don't have the qualifications. You have the most important qualification, Professor Walsh interjected. You can play, brilliantly. Everything else can be learned. We're prepared to offer you a position as artist-in-residence to start, the dean explained. It would involve some master classes, private lessons with advanced students, and perhaps a faculty recital when you feel ready. The salary would be considerably more than your current position, of course, and includes faculty housing, a real apartment, not a dormitory room. Lily's mind raced. It was happening too fast. Yesterday she had been anonymous, invisible. Now she was being offered a teaching position based on a single unplanned performance. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Dean Rodriguez nodded, but I should mention that the press is already here. Reporters are gathering outside the main entrance. We can hold them off temporarily, but eventually, you'll need to make some sort of statement. A knock at the door interrupted them. The dean's assistant poked her head in. I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's someone here who's quite insistent on seeing Ms. Chang. A Mr. Winters? He says he's her former agent. Lily's heart skipped. Robert was here, in person? Do you want to see him? Professor Walsh asked her gently. After a moment's hesitation, Lily nodded. She would have to face him eventually. Robert Winters looked older than she remembered. His once dark hair now salt and pepper, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But his energy was unchanged as he burst into the room, stopping short when he saw her. Mei Ling, he breathed, using her stage name without thinking. It really is you. They stared at each other for a long moment. 16 years of silence hung between them. Hello, Robert, she said finally. Dean Rodriguez cleared his throat. We'll give you some privacy, he said, ushering Professor Walsh and his assistant out of the room. When the door closed, Robert approached slowly, as if afraid she might vanish again if he moved too quickly. You look different, he said, but the same too. I recognized your playing immediately when that video hit social media. No one interprets Rachmaninoff quite like you. You saw the video? Lily asked, surprised despite herself. How did it spread so quickly? Are you kidding? It's everywhere. Custodian stuns music conservatory with world-class piano performance. It's been shared thousands of times. He shook his head in wonder. Always the quiet ones, eh? Hiding in plain sight for, 16 years? I wasn't hiding, Lily said, the familiar defensiveness rising. I was taking care of my mother. Robert's expression softened. I know, I'm sorry about your mom. I found out she passed away earlier this year. He must have seen the question in her eyes because he added, I kept tabs on you, Mei Ling. Not to pressure you to come back, just to make sure you were okay. I respected your decision to step away, even if I didn't fully understand it at the time. The admission surprised her. She had always assumed he'd been angry when she canceled her tour and disappeared from public life. He had stood to lose a significant commission after all. You weren't just a client to me, he said, seeming to read her thoughts. We worked together for 10 years. I cared about what happened to you. Lily felt a lump form in her throat. I'm sorry I didn't stay in touch. Water under the bridge, he said with a dismissive wave. The question is, what now? That video has opened the floodgates. People remember you, Mei Ling. Your recordings still sell. There's a whole new generation of piano students who study your interpretations. He leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement. Do you have any idea what kind of comeback you could make? And there it was, the pressure she had been dreading. I don't want a comeback, Robert. I'm not the same person I was 16 years ago. Of course not. None of us are. He sat back, studying her. But that woman I saw in the video playing Rachmaninoff like her soul depended on it, that was still you. That fire is still there. Lily couldn't deny it. Playing on a real piano again, in front of an audience, had awakened something in her she thought had been buried forever. I've been offered a teaching position here, she said. Robert raised his eyebrows. Teaching? Well, that's safe. What's wrong with safe? She challenged. I've had enough drama and pressure for one lifetime. Nothing's wrong with it, he said carefully. If that's really what you want, but Mei Ling, Lily, she corrected him. I go by Lily Chen now. He nodded, accepting the correction. Lily, then. I just want to make sure you're not hiding again, just in a different way. Teaching is noble work, but if you're choosing it out of fear rather than passion. His words hit uncomfortably close to home. Was she choosing the safer path out of genuine interest or simply to avoid the pressure of returning to performance? Before she could respond, there was another knock at the door. Professor Walsh entered, looking apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the faculty is gathering, and the situation outside is growing. Complicated. There are at least 3 television news crews now, along with reporters from major newspapers and music journals. Robert stood. I should go. But Lily, whatever you decide, I'm here to support you as a friend, not just an agent. He handed her a business card. Call me anytime. After he left, Professor Walsh sat beside Lily. The vultures are circling, I'm afraid. Fame has a way of feeding on itself. What am I going to tell them? Lily asked, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. The truth, Professor Walsh suggested gently, or as much of it as you're comfortable sharing. Your story is actually quite compelling. The pianist who gave up fame to care for her mother, finding her way back to music after all these years. She paused. People love stories of sacrifice and redemption. I didn't do it to be noble, Lily objected. She was my mother. There was no choice to make. That's what makes it remarkable, Professor Walsh said simply. Now, are you ready to meet the faculty? Many of them are quite excited to welcome you as a colleague rather than custodial staff. As they walked toward the conference room, Lily's mind was still spinning with the events of the past 24 hours. Her carefully constructed life had been completely upended. Yet alongside the anxiety and uncertainty, there was a growing sense of possibility, doors opening that she had believed forever closed. The faculty meeting passed in a blur of introductions and expressions of admiration. Lily found herself shaking hands with professors who had barely noticed her existence the day before. Some seemed genuinely welcoming. Others clearly saw her as an opportunity to elevate the conservatory's profile. Through it all, she remained quiet, responding politely but volunteering little. When the dean formally offered her the artist-in-residence position, with the possibility of a permanent faculty appointment after the first year, she thanked him but asked for a few days to consider. Of course, he agreed, though his disappointment was evident. But I should mention that we've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. It would be helpful if you could attend, regardless of your decision about the position. As the meeting concluded, Lily found herself at a crossroads. The life she had carefully built over the past 6 months had evaporated overnight. Now she faced choices she never expected to make again, not just whether to teach or perform, but how much of herself she was willing to share with the world after so many years of privacy. Outside the conservatory, reporters waited with their cameras and microphones, eager for the story of the vanished virtuoso's unexpected return. Inside, students whispered excitedly about taking lessons from a living legend. And somewhere in between, Lily Chen, once known to the world as Mei Ling Chung, searched for a path that would honor both the artist she had been and the woman she had become. As she slipped out the side entrance with Professor Walsh's help, avoiding the press for now, one thing became clear to Lily. Whatever she decided, there would be no going back to invisibility. The music she had kept private for so long had found its voice again. Now she had to find hers. Lily stood at the window of her new faculty apartment, watching students cross the courtyard below. 3 months had passed since her identity had been revealed, and slowly, a new rhythm had established itself in her life. The press conference, which she had reluctantly attended, had resulted in a flurry of articles and television segments about the custodian virtuoso and her remarkable story. For 2 weeks, reporters had camped outside the conservatory gates, hoping for interviews or photographs. But like all news cycles, this one eventually faded. Newer stories took precedence, and Lily was left to adjust to her new reality and relative peace. She had accepted the artist-in-residence position, teaching advanced piano students and giving occasional master classes. The conservatory had converted a storage room into a private studio for her, with a beautiful restored Steinway that reminded her of the piano she had played in her youth. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Alice, one of her most promising students, standing in the hallway clutching a folder of sheet music. "Am I too early for my lesson, Professor Chen?" the young woman asked, still getting used to addressing her former custodian with the new title. "Not at all," Lily said, gesturing her inside. "And please, just call me Lily. I'm still getting used to Professor myself." Alice smiled and set up her music at the piano, a smaller upright that Lily had purchased for her apartment. "I've been practicing the Chopin nocturne you assigned, but I'm struggling with the middle section." "Show me what you've been working on," Lily said, sitting beside her on the bench. As Alice began to play, Lily watched her hands, noting the tension in her wrists and the slight hesitation before difficult passages. The young woman was talented but hampered by self-doubt, something Lily understood all too well. When Alice finished, she looked up nervously. "It's still not right, is it?" "The notes are all there," Lily said gently. "But you're playing from your fingers, not your heart. Chopin's nocturnes are like intimate conversations, whispers in the darkness. Where are you in this piece? Alice looked confused. I don't understand. Close your eyes, Lily instructed. Forget the notes for a moment. What does this piece make you feel? The student closed her eyes, considering. It makes me think of walking alone at night. Peaceful, but with a touch of sadness. Good. Now play it again, but this time tell me that story through the music. Don't worry about perfect technique. Just feel it. Alice began again, and this time her playing had a different quality. Less precise, perhaps, but more expressive. When she finished, she looked up in surprise. It felt different that time. It sounded different too, Lily said with a smile. Technical skill is important, but music must have soul to touch others. That's something I had to relearn myself recently. After Alice left, Lily prepared for her next appointment. Not a student this time, but Robert Winters, her former agent. He had been persistent in staying connected since her return to the music world, visiting the conservatory every few weeks to discuss what he called opportunities. He arrived punctually, as always, bearing a small gift bag. For your new home, he explained, handing it to her. Inside was a delicate crystal music box. It plays Debussy. I thought you'd appreciate the craftsmanship. It's lovely, Lily said, setting it on her mantel. Thank you. They sat in her small living room, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows. So, Robert began, getting straight to business as was his habit. Have you considered the Carnegie Hall offer? It would be the perfect venue for your return to the stage. Intimate enough to be comfortable, prestigious enough to make a statement. Lily sighed. Despite her repeated insistence that she wasn't ready for a major performance, Robert continued to bring opportunities to her door. Part of her was touched by his unwavering belief in her abilities. Another part was frustrated by the pressure. I'm still focusing on teaching right now, she said firmly. My students need consistency, especially mid-semester. Robert leaned forward. Lily, you're one of the finest pianists of your generation. Teaching is valuable work, but your gift shouldn't be confined to a classroom. The world deserves to hear you play again. The world has moved on, Robert. There are new stars now. Younger pianists with fresh interpretations. My time has passed. That video of you playing Rachmaninoff has over 10 million views online, he countered. Clearly the world hasn't forgotten you. If anything, your story has only increased public interest. Lily got up and walked to the window, needing distance from his intensity. Below, a student was practicing violin under a tree, the music floating up faintly. What are you really afraid of? Robert asked quietly. Is it the pressure? The criticism? The travel? The question caught her off guard. What was she afraid of? She had told herself it was the grueling schedule, the constant demands, the loneliness of hotel rooms. But was that the whole truth? I'm afraid of losing myself again, she admitted finally. Before my mother's illness, I was so caught up in being Mei Ling Chang, the pianist, that I had no identity outside of music. My worth was measured in reviews and ticket sales. When I stepped away to care for my mother, I had to become someone else. Someone whose value wasn't determined by how well she played Chopin. Understanding dawned in Robert's eyes. And you're worried that returning to performance would mean losing Lily Chen? She nodded. 16 years is a long time, Robert. I'm not the same person who left the stage. I don't want to pretend that I am. He was quiet for a moment, considering her words. What if you didn't have to choose? What if Mei Ling and Lily could coexist? What do you mean? I mean a different kind of career. Not the grueling international tours of your 20s, but something more selective. Performances that matter to you. Pieces that speak to your journey. And teaching, too. Sharing what you've learned with the next generation. The idea was appealing, but Lily still hesitated. I don't know if I'm ready for any public performances yet. Then start small, Robert suggested. The conservatory's winter showcase is next month, isn't it? Why not play there? Home territory, supportive audience, low pressure. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a message. It was from Professor Walsh, asking if she could stop by her office to discuss a student matter. Lily promised Robert she would think about his suggestion and walked him to the door. One more thing, he said before leaving. Whatever you decide about performing, have you considered teaching master classes for students who are also caregivers? Your experience could be invaluable to young musicians trying to balance their art with family responsibilities. The idea struck a chord with Lily. Throughout her years caring for her mother, She had often wished for guidance from someone who understood both worlds, the demanding path of a serious musician and the all-consuming role of a caregiver. "That's actually a wonderful idea," she said, surprised by how strongly it resonated. After Robert left, Lily made her way across campus to Professor Walsh's office. Students nodded respectfully as she passed, still somewhat in awe of her despite the months that had passed since her revelation. A few of the piano students gave her shy smiles, having worked with her in master classes. Professor Walsh was waiting, a concerned expression on her face. "Thank you for coming, Lily. We have a situation with one of our scholarship students, Minji Park. The first year from Chicago. What's happened? Her father has suffered a severe stroke." Professor Walsh's words hit Lily like a physical blow. "She's talking about withdrawing to go home and help care for him," I thought. "Given your experience, you thought I might be able to talk to her," Lily finished. Professor Walsh nodded. "You're uniquely qualified to understand her dilemma. She's in practice room 12 right now, trying to prepare for her midterm recital, but her heart isn't in it. Would you mind speaking with her?" Lily found Minji sitting at the piano, staring at the keys, music open but clearly untouched. The young woman looked up when Lily entered, hastily wiping away tears. "Professor Chen, I'm sorry, I was just about to practice." "No need to apologize," Lily said gently, sitting beside her on the bench. "Professor Walsh told me about your father." "I'm very sorry." Minji's composure cracked slightly. "Thank you. It happened so suddenly. The doctors say he'll need care for months, maybe longer. My mother works 2 jobs already and my younger siblings are still in high school." She closed the piano lid slowly. "I have to go home." "There's no choice. There's always a choice," Lily said. "But sometimes none of the options feel right." She hesitated, then continued. "Did Professor Walsh tell you about my mother?" Minji nodded, a little. "She said you left your career to care for her after a stroke." "For 16 years, Lily confirmed. "I don't regret it. She needed me and I loved her. But I wish I had known then what I know now, that it didn't have to be all or nothing." She explained how she had cut herself off completely from the music world, believing it was the only way to fulfill her duty to her mother. How she had worked jobs that left her drained, rather than seeking help or exploring options that might have allowed her to maintain some connection to her art. "The hardest part of caregiving is remembering to care for yourself too," Lily said. "It took me years to learn that lesson, and by then I had lost touch with a part of myself that mattered deeply." Minji listened intently. "But what can I do? My family needs me, and the conservatory requires full-time attendance. I can't be in 2 places at once." "Perhaps not," Lily agreed. "But what if there were a third option? A temporary leave perhaps, or a reduced course load? And what if there were financial support specifically for students in your situation?" The idea that had been forming since Robert's suggestion earlier that day suddenly crystallized. Lily could see it clearly now, not just a way to help this one student, but a path forward for herself as well. 2 weeks later, Lily stood on the stage of the main recital hall, facing a room full of faculty, administrators, and donors. Her proposal was simple but revolutionary for the conservatory: a scholarship fund specifically for talented students with family caregiving responsibilities. It would provide not just financial support but practical assistance, flexible scheduling, remote learning options when necessary, and access to resources that could help their families. "Many promising musicians abandon their studies when family crises occur," she explained, "not because they lack talent or dedication, but because they lack support. I'm proposing that Whitmore become the first conservatory in the country to recognize the unique challenges these students face and create a pathway for them to continue their education while fulfilling family obligations." She paused, looking out at the attentive faces. "To launch this fund, I'm willing to give a benefit recital, my first public performance in 16 years. All proceeds will go directly to establishing the Caregiver Musician Scholarship." The room erupted in applause. Dean Rodriguez stepped forward to shake her hand, beaming with approval. "A brilliant proposal, Professor Chen. And a concert by Mei Ling Chang, forgive me. Lily Chen will certainly sell out instantly." In the weeks that followed, Lily found herself busier than she had been in years. Between teaching her regular students, working with the administration to structure the new scholarship program, and preparing for her recital, she barely had time to second-guess her decision. The night of the performance arrived with a mixture of snow and freezing rain, a weather that would normally reduce attendance at campus events. But the recital hall was packed to capacity, with people standing along the walls and sitting in the aisles despite the fire marshal's objections. Backstage, Lily took deep breaths, fighting the familiar flutter of performance anxiety. Robert adjusted her shawl and gave her an encouraging smile. "They're ready for you," he said. "Are you ready for them?" She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, from celebrated prodigy to anonymous custodian to something new that was still taking shape. She thought about Minji Park, who was now continuing her studies remotely while helping her family through their crisis, supported by emergency funds that would soon become the formal scholarship program. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. As she walked onto the stage, the applause was deafening. She acknowledged it with a small bow, then sat at the piano, adjusting the bench to her height. The room fell silent as she placed her hands on the keys. Lily had chosen her program carefully. Not the showy, technically demanding pieces of her earlier career, but works that told a story, her story. She began with Beethoven's Pathétique Sonata, moved through selected Chopin nocturnes, and concluded with a piece she had written herself during the long nights of her mother's illness. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the audience rose as one. Applause thundering through the hall. Lily stood to accept their appreciation, her eyes finding Minji in the front row, the young woman's face streaked with tears. In that moment, Lily understood that she had found her answer. She would never again be just Mei-Ling Chang, the piano virtuoso, nor would she return to the invisibility of Lily Chen, the custodian. She had become something else, a musician whose life experience had deepened her art, a teacher whose personal journey informed her guidance, a woman who had learned that sacrifice and self-fulfillment did not have to be mutually exclusive. As she took her final bow, Lily felt a sense of completion. The circle that had begun when she first touched a piano as a child had not been broken by her years away from the stage. It had merely widened to encompass more of life, more of humanity, more of the world beyond the concert hall. And in that widening, both her music and her heart had found a new and richer voice.